I'm very excited for it. I think it's a slam dunk. I think Ryan Day nailed it. I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championship, the season of dreams.
So JUCK over with Menace to Sports.
And if we allow them to devalue it, we lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. The Ohio State Buckeyes, the 2024 national champs, will be remembered for how they came out of that. And welcome into JUCK on Bucks on a Breaking News Wednesday. Appreciate you so much for joining me. Multiple reports not yet released by the university yet, but credible sources are reporting that the offensive line search is over. Ryan Day has settled on his replacement for Justin Frye, and that man is Tyler Bowen. Tyler Bowen. I think it says a lot about what direction Ryan Day is going to go with for offensive coordinator, but let's get into Tyler Bowen. Who is he? What's his career path? Where is he from? He's from Georgia. 35 years old, 6'7", 310 pounds, by the way. He ends up being recruited out of high school to go play up at Maryland. So he played for the Terps under Ralph Friedgen and offensive coordinator James Franklin, who will be instrumental in his career journey. Immediately after graduating from Maryland, he stays there for a couple years as a GA. So immediately gets into coaching, has a little quick stop at Towson after that, before he gets the call up to Penn State when James Franklin took over. So he goes to Penn State, just spends 1 year there, his first go around, and then he gets the offensive line coaching position at Fordham under head coach Joe Moorhead. Who's Joe Moorhead? He's the head coach at the University of Akron. He's the former offensive coordinator at Penn State and Oregon. We've discussed him here on the show as a potential candidate for the Ohio State offensive coordinator job, and Tyler Bowen knows him very well. So he coaches the offensive line at Fordham for 2 years, and then he gets the same role at Maryland. So he goes back to his alma mater to coach the offensive line under DJ Durkin. That was a bad hire. That was a bad coach. That was a bad football team and a bad offensive line. In those 3 years, the only time Tyler Bowen has ever coached the offensive line. That final year was 2017. So it's been 8 years since this guy's coached an offensive line. After that 1 year under DJ Durkin at Maryland, he gets the call from Penn State to come back to Penn State, as the offensive coordinator there at the time was Joe Moorhead. So Joe Moorhead, who hired him at Fordham, gets over to Penn State. They bring him back, and they want him to coach tight ends. So he comes in. He's never coached tight ends, does it successfully, and he also gets the role as the offensive recruiting coordinator. In that class, he lands Tyler Warren, superstar tight end. I think he also landed that stud lineman that came out of there. The point is, you don't put somebody in that role if they're not a guy with serious recruiting chops. The offensive recruiting coordinator, and they give him that role and a tight end, coaching tight ends, which is kind of the entry level in the big times. We see Keenan Bailey doing this now, into position coaching at the big time level. So pretty big promotion to get the call up there to Penn State. In 2019, they gave him the interim offensive coordinator role. Now, this is a very respected guy. Clearly, he was only 30 years old at the time, coaching tight ends, and they moved him up to the interim OC. In 2020, he stayed on at Penn State as the co-offensive coordinator and offensive recruiting coordinator. Then he went to Jacksonville to coach in the NFL, coach tight ends under Urban Meyer for that year, which obviously didn't go great. From there, he goes to Virginia Tech as the offensive coordinator and tight ends coach, then the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, and that brings us up to present. All right, that was a lot. Coaches, they're very transient in their profession, but there's a lot of impressive moves there at 35 years old, I think. So this dude, brass tacks, man, this is an offensive lineman at heart. This is an offensive lineman. My biggest thing here, what I wanted for the Buckeyes to do was either get an experienced offensive line coach who was kind of the next up-and-comer, a real stud at, he really had it going at maybe a little lower level, but you could tell he was a dude that had the juice, that was ready for the next step, or someone who had experience coaching the offensive line and recruiting at another high-level program like Ohio State. I really wanted it to be someone who was based in the Midwest or the Northeast, because that's what I want the Buckeyes to focus on in the offensive line recruiting area. And when we look at Tyler Bowen, from a recruiting standpoint, his 5 biggest recruits ever, Let's pull them up. We've got Olney, Maryland, Windsor, Ontario, Walford, Maryland, Hyattsville, Maryland, and Scranton, PA. So this guy's got a recruiting base in the DMV, in Maryland, in the Northeast. Now he comes to Ohio State. He can own the Midwest. I really like that. I really like it from that standpoint. Also of note, when he was at Penn State as the offensive coordinator, giving him that title of the offensive recruiting director, that's big time. I really like that. He got it as a tight end coach, got it as the offensive coordinator. That means this guy's a big time recruiter. They believed in him. He's also from the South. I didn't want a guy from the South, but he's been working up here his whole career. So that helps him when he's taking that big swing going down south, trying to get that number one recruit that he is. He's from Georgia, a little way to relate there. But this guy's career has been up here, and I like it. What's his personality like? Let's take a listen.
Hey, so how you doing, man? It starts up front. All right, let's go now. Yeah, I see you, Braylon. I see you, Braylon. Don't let it leave your body. Squeeze your core. Squeeze your core. Do it with purpose. With purpose. With purpose. Everything with purpose. Be under control. Be under control. Good ball.
All right, let's hear him answering a question with the media here. I like this answer.
What it takes to help develop quarterbacks and in turn help an offense get going.
Yeah, well, I think the one thing that I think everyone would know is as an offensive coordinator, it's not like I wasn't already heavily involved with the quarterback position. I think there are a ton of benefits with me being in that room day to day that I felt through last season. We scheduled meetings throughout the year. I had certain checkpoints with those guys during a week from a game plan standpoint, but you miss some of the day-to-day, the development, their alignment, how they're throwing the football, and honestly what they're comfortable with schematically, and me being able to make sure that the offensive identity is shaped around that player because it all starts and ends with him. I've had a ton of mentors. I've been around quarterback play in offensive rooms my whole career. I never played tight end either, but I'd like to think I did a pretty good job of recruiting and developing that position. Good enough to be able to do it at the highest level of football. And I feel the same way with the quarterback position. I do have mentors, most recently guys like Brian Schottenheimer, Darrell Bevel, just to name a couple. But obviously it's something I've been involved with the whole way. And I think tight end, if you understand that position and the way it is in the new age of football, there's a lot of similarities in the two positions. I know he doesn't throw and catch, but you're involved in every facet of the game. That's why I enjoyed coaching that position. I think there's some carryover, but I think the benefit that comes for our offense is that decision maker that's got to be on every play, him understanding what I want with each call and the why behind it to a T, the same way I do. He's an extension of me on the field. And then also just me understanding those guys, what strengths and weaknesses and what are they comfortable with on a day-to-day basis.
All right, so when I listen to that, a couple things. Number one, that's a sharp dude. We always talk about, when we talk about these hires, sometimes even when we talk about recruiting, we don't get to sit across from these guys and listen to them, how they carry themselves, what their goals are. When you listen to that guy, number one, sharp dude. Number two, he's going to be a head coach at some point. And number three, you can certainly see why he impressed Ryan Day. That's an impressive guy right there. Love that answer. I think that it is somewhat concerning that he has not coached the offensive line since 2018. And even there, he only coached 2 years at Fordham, 1 year at Maryland. Sure, it's a little concerning on that end, and I'm sure that some people are going to be irritated by that. But when we look at what this guy just came from, he was an offensive coordinator in the ACC. Like he had gotten past the rung of offensive line coach. He was up here. He's dropping back to coach the offensive line, which you would say is, a step backwards, but he's doing it at Ohio State. And he's going to try to go this avenue to advance his career, which is what these guys are all after. I think it's a smart move. I think it's a really smart move, as we just saw what Justin Frye did. So he's looking at that saying, I think this is the better avenue. Ryan Day's looking at this saying, this guy can coach the offensive line. He can run a whole damn offense. How did he do as an offensive coordinator? They scored 28 points a game, 367 yards a game. They ran the ball better than they passed the ball, which is good, 4.7 yards a carry. And when we look at this hire as an offensive coordinator, this guy's maybe giving us a little insight into what Ryan Day is thinking here. If Brian Hartline is in fact the hire, he was always going to need some support in the run game. So run game coordinator, offensive coordinator, absolutely he can do that and do it very well and effectively. I think it's a slam dunk. Obviously, it's going to be a while before we know that. Just like with Justin Frye, I always said we got to give him 3 years before we can accurately say this guy's doing a good job in developing. We'll find out on the recruiting trail right away. I'm very excited for it. I think it's a slam dunk. I think Ryan Day nailed it. And even if I questioned it, we wouldn't be able to say yay or nay for 3 years, right? That's just what it is. So tell me what you think. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Curious to hear. I'm going to say that Ryan Day is starting this off 1 for 1. That's a big one. I love it. You got an OC to come down and be the offensive line coach at Ohio State. And he wasn't an OC that was in danger of losing his job. He was effective. So good with me. Hey, it's Juck.
Juck. Who is Juck?
Juck on Bucks.
Juck on Bucks. Juck on Bucks.
Juck.
Juck. Juck. Juck on Bucks.
My guy, Juck.
Juck on Bucks.
My buddy Juck.
Juck is the Juck.
It's Juck on Bucks.
Okay. Juck is junk.
The Juck Eyes.
The Juck Eyes.
Juck on Bucks.
Junk. Juck. Not junk. Juck.